what do you think it's going to take for people to ultimately get it, and for if there's an event, and look, I'm not asking for timing because it's the event that'll drive the timing, but what event would cause your sensors, your radar, to go into the loss of space robot theme, warning, 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 that's absolutely not in the market at this point, but would be, I would guess, your red button launch to tell all your subscribers, listeners, this is it, guys. What is the event? If there's an event or multiple events, what would those events be to you?
Steve, that's a tough question. And as I mentioned before, the possible Greek exit of the European Union, which is actually not a big deal, small country, but it has a massive leverage that can go throughout the system. So it could be almost any event that, like we saw in 2008, when, I mean, at one point in time, you had Bernanke and Bush come out, and they had to reshore the markets. I mean, gold went up $100 that day. There's a seize up that day in the money market account. And so it's hard to say what event will do it. But if you go to China and you go to any bank in China, if you're just a Chinese citizen, you could ask the teller to buy gold and silver. You see, there's 1,000 little nails that are going, that paper cuts that are happening right now that continue to happen. And what I think happened is the Chinese government allowed gold and silver to be purchased not too long ago. And I think the reason why they did that, Steve, was they acquired enough gold reserve. So they said, okay, let's let the public start buying it, and let's take the gold from the west to the east now in the public hands. But I think the event, Americans didn't wake up to silver until the price shot up to $49 in 1980. And they didn't wake up and start seeing it until it shot up again this time to $50. So what it is most people are just unaware. I think when we see a collapse of stock prices, 401ks, this time around, and one guy, the reason why he's buying silver, or gold, he doesn't trust the banks now. And the banks were problematic back in 2008, 9, but they still trusted the banks. Now we're starting to see certain people, certain percentages of people do not trust the banks now. And this is just the beginning. So I can't give an event or timing, as you know, but I think when we see a dislocation in the market, I don't think we're going to see the price of silver go from $16 today to $18 to $22 to $28 to $31 to $35. It's not going to happen that way. It's going to be an overnight event. It'll be where the dollar is devalued. It'll happen on the weekend. That will be the event that will wake up the American mind. And at that point in time, I think the wealthy, the elite, J.P. Morgan, they will already have their gold and silver stash at that point in time. So that's how I see it playing out.
Well, that's a specific answer. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I pay very specific attention to the numbers of the mint. I can correlate the numbers of the mint. I go to Steve's report. Steve, tell people how they can get your $25. For those of you out there, let me tell you something. I have been at this long enough to know who knows what they're doing. And I absolutely am thrilled to have Steve Rocco on this show with me tonight, in order to clear up misconceptions, in order to help you understand. This is the thing that's lacking. People sometimes buy the metals, and they don't even know why they buy them, but they buy them because their son, daughter-in-law, brother, sister, whoever told them to. Tonight, we're telling you to buy it. I mean, seriously, I know a guy that brags about having $1 million. He's a farmer in Bozeman, in his bank account at any given time. And I said, how much you make last year? I just made blah, 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 blah. Yeah, less than 1%, okay? I said, do you know what that would get you, since the metals have been down? I said, how would you like, 50,000 in a day? Well, yeah, but it's just more convenient for me. Again, the three things I find that cause people to shy away from metals It's the convenience factor. I talked to a guy who's close to being a billionaire. I'm not going to drop names. I mean, he's right there, okay? Know him very well. I can dial him up on my phone, and I still have tried to get him to understand that the majority of his investment, he got a hold of me, by the way. I didn't track him down. I don't do cold calling. I want people to know that. But there's still a, how do I say this, a disconnect, Steve, between, and I mean, a guy that, look, I can't argue with anybody's business plan that, or business acumen that can make that kind of money starting from scratch. But the point I'm trying to say is, it seems like even wealthy people are having a hard time separating that getting nothing versus having something in hand. There's a great disconnect there. Have you personally encountered people like that? I deal with that almost on a daily basis.
No, I do. And even if you tell them the information, it's just for some reason, I think it's programming. What it is, people are programmed to be Republican, and they're programmed to be Democrat, liberal. They're programmed to be certain ideologies. Now, you cannot change that programming with a little bit of code. It just won't work. That programming has been going on for 50, 60, 70 years. So a sentence, a paragraph, a couple of pages, a couple of charts, it doesn't change that programming. And what changes the programming is the gut-wrenching moment where you see the stock market crash, like what happened in '29. What's happened, last month when we had sort of 1,000-point drop in a day. Those get people woke up. And so I think the problem is now we're still seeing people moving around. There's still commerce happening. They're going to Starbucks, movies, restaurants. We're still seeing activity happening. So no one thinks anything is wrong. But underlying it is being propped up by the government, the U.S. government, the Federal Reserve. They're propping up, they're buying the bonds, they're buying the stocks. And so it looks good until it doesn't look good. And this time around, it'll be much worse in 2008. And so people, even very wealthy people, just for some reason, some are getting it. It's a very small percentage, but most still don't. And I still find that is one of the most amazing things to me, where it's right in front of you, but they just can't see it.
It's true.
I think that's an accurate statement. Now, I'm sorry, I may have interrupted you. Please forgive me. I didn't mean to. How do people get your report? I would say this, that it's the best $25 anybody could spend who owns silver, is thinking about silver, just to let them see. It's real simple. If a chart was at, let's say, 1 inch high with demand 2 years ago, and now it's 6 inches high, or whatever the scale is, that tells you there's more demand. Demand will ultimately override supply. I've noticed too, what another thing is that this, and I've said this so many times on Doug's show over the years, that people do not want to take personal responsibility for their own finances. They want to allow someone else as an effective means of blaming things don't go wrong. And I'm telling you, after being 25 years on talk radio, and I don't know, probably with no exaggeration, 1 million emails. And I actually, Doug, keep that on my computer, on my Mac at the store. So in case, and that's not spam, okay? So people can see the date, and that would have been, that would be for 2 years now. And that's not spam. And all the people that feed back to me, I've got to tell you something. It's pretty much personal. They don't want to take personal responsibility. And what Steve Rocco just said is absolutely true. It is the, what would you say, the anesthetic of the norm. It is the expectation that things will remain the same. It is, and I've had people flat out be honest with me, I sleep better than you do. They say this to me, and I say, but for how long? Again, I've got a really good alert. I want to draw everyone's attention. We'll talk about it, but please, ladies and gentlemen, go to my alert on my alerts page. But again, Steve, how do people get your report? I keep cutting you off. I'm sorry.
No, and I appreciate it. This report I put together for new people in the silver market and industry, as well as experience, and it's like 4 years worth of work, as well as a lot of new charts. And I take the silver market, break it down in industry in 5 different segments, and show people. It's a nice chart, and I explain each chart. Very colorful, very easy to read, and it's in like a silver market, silver production, the silver price, official coins. I go over, and then also the mining industry. What we didn't even talk about, the top primary silver miners, their average ore grade has fallen 44% since 2005. That means what they were digging out of the ground in 2005, it takes them, they got to move almost double the amount of ore to produce the same silver. So in this silver chart report, it's 58 pages long, and it's got 48 charts. You can get it at the SRS Rocco report under Rocco's reports. It should be the silver chart report. And there's a lot of information we just scratched on today. But I think they would learn a lot more things, and they could see. I look at silver as a trend, and gold's the same way. I like gold too, don't get me wrong. Both precious metals, as you said, you have to take responsibility of your finances. And I talk to some guys high up in the financial industry, and they deal with wealthy clients. And when they try to talk to them about gold and silver, they don't even want to hear it. What do they tell the financial advisor? I don't care what you got to do. Just get me the percentage. They don't want to know. And you see, nowadays you have to know, because you can't trust the government and what's happening in the market. And that's the problem. People do not care to know how they're going to make their returns. That's the financial planner's problem. And unfortunately, that's a very bad situation to be in now. Don't you agree, Steve?
Well, absolutely. And I'm going to turn this right over to you. Most people don't understand how silver and gold mines are financed. And the same people that have manipulated the price of silver and gold down in the spot market are also the banking, let's say, international bankers or investment consortiums that have intentionally wanted to dry up the production capabilities of the silver or gold miners so that no new product comes on the market until after they've driven the new market, or their physical possessions up into the stratosphere. Go ahead and share. We've got another, 14 minutes or so. Share on the silver mining issue, because I don't think people understand that it's for every 25,000 pounds of dirt, there's 1.5 grams of silver. That's how scarce it is. So share everything you want to share on the mining sector, because look, that's where it all starts. And again, going back to our premise, there may be silver on the shelves now in sporadic locations. That's not what we're saying. But what we're saying is the ability to add new silver into the market through the normal distribution channels and the old distribution channels are already showing real stress. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, if we go back 100 years, it's been a totally different. 100 years is total different change in the gold and silver market. And just to clarify, back in the 1800s, the U.S. and other countries were producing gold at about 25, 30 grams per ton. And there's 32 grams in an ounce. Well, now the top 5 gold miners are producing, the yield is down to 1.2 grams per ton. So it's almost gold dust. And that's the average of the top 5 biggest producing gold mines in the world. Now, silver, and actually I went to this, it's called the historic Horn Silver Mine in Frisco, Utah. That was one of the biggest silver mines in the United States at the time in the 1800s, late 1800s. They produced silver at 30 ounces a ton, no problem, easy peasy. Well, First Majestic is one of the larger primary silver mines, not the biggest, but one of the larger primary silver mines, and they do a good job. But they're producing silver at like 3.7 million ounces a ton. It's almost 10 times less. So we could see over the time, it just takes a lot more energy, a lot more investment, a lot more time and labor to produce this gold and silver. And I don't think people realize that it's so much more intensive now, investment-wise, capital-wise, and energy. I mean, I did a study. The top 5 are consuming 50% more diesel, an ounce of gold to produce it in the last 10 years, to produce that same ounce of gold than they were in 2005. And so these are more factors that show you, while the Fed can print money, and here's an interesting thing, it takes 10 to 12 cents, I think it's 12 cents, to produce or mint a new $100 bill, the new high anti-counterfeit $100 bill. So if they were to produce 11 of those, which is $1,100, it would cost them $1.30 something. Well, it takes the gold mining industry to produce gold about $1,100. So the Fed can produce $1,100 worth of Benjamin Franklin's for $1.30, and the gold mining industry can produce an ounce of gold for $1,100. And that's the major disconnect that's happened. And I think very few people understand that.
Well, again, as your costs of excavation, even every cost associated with 1 ounce of gold or 1 ounce of silver, platinum or palladium, platinum even more so, and then when you take in the South African mines that have to go deeper and deeper and deeper, one of the biggest costs as you go deeper into the ground to extract more metals is energy for the air filtration, the air conditioning, and also just to pump water out. So and I want to lay this out, it is my contention, and this isn't conspiracy, it's based on watching it play out in real life, talking to the people that handle the billion-dollar gold and silver deals, that basically we are going to see at some point the same people that manipulated down, who are sitting on, let's just say, 90% of all the silver and or gold coins that have been produced, because they already acknowledged, Doug, Joe, and Steve, that there's going to be a panic for the real thing, okay? Trust me, a soda isn't the real thing, especially when you find out what's in it nowadays. If they were real people, now the real people, we used to joke, Soylent Green, now it's Soylent Pop. And I mean that with disgust. So the point is that as the cost of extracting the metals from the ground increases, as the cost of banking is going up, and as the derivatives market melts down, there will be less people willing or able to step up to underwrite these projects unless it's the Chinese government or the Russians. And here's the deal. I would have to say this, that watching the Russians and Chinese do what they're doing in the economies, having done what they did in providing, China specifically, cheap labor, what was it that built Walmart? Absolutely slave labor. What was it that gave the Chinese their multi-trillion-dollar surplus in U.S. currency that they can go buy anything in the world? You know what the Chinese are doing? They're buying properties. I know you know this, Steve. I have friends that fly helicopters all over the world, from New Guinea to Africa. I just got a lot of friends, a lot of people that I know, and they're saying, Steve, every place we go, we're running into Chinese geologists, and they're stepping up to the pump and promising the countries they'll build infrastructure, they'll build railroads, blah blah blah, ports, whatever. And the same thing with the armies of Russia. And I want to share something. People don't know what the future holds because they're too bloody lazy to realize what the history of the world absolutely spells out in plain language. And for the record, if you go and look at the history of silver on the visual capitalists, you're probably familiar with that, Steve. Silver was more highly thought of and actually exceeded the price of gold in Egypt. It's one of the only countries in the world 3,000 years ago that silver was rarer than gold, by the way, still is. And if you look at the mining figures for silver to gold, what we have is the most orchestrated attempt to keep real money out of the hands of real people and to sell them crap. That's paper that has no value, and the people selling you the crap are taking the proceeds from the crap they're selling you and buying the real thing, and that's it in a nutshell. So that's what we're trying to say to people tonight. We're trying to give them a whole glimpse of the infield of silver. And again, Doug, I don't believe, and I look, I can say this, I hope I don't have to, this would be the case, but I don't foresee much more time, just because of what's going on in the Middle East, which we're going to talk about in the next hour, that this will even be a point worth talking about, because there does come a time, and Steve, I'll give you the last 7 minutes, take them or whatever, that there'll be a time where you won't just physically be able to buy it, because anybody who has silver gold, that's not a fear tactic, it's just a real situation. The minute silver wealth funds step into the market, and a silver wealth fund is obviously sovereign wealth fund from China, Russia, India, whoever, they're all going to dump their foreign holdings as fast as they can. And I don't have the time to do it. Steve, maybe you do it. But it's interesting to me, the amount of treasuries that are being dumped, the amount of junk bonds that are being dumped, that's all a matter of record. And isn't it interesting, there's almost a corresponding relationship between the dumping of paper and the acquisition of physical? Seriously, if someone can't see that, then I'm not sure microscopes, telescopes, or just really good spectacles can help people to understand that. Go ahead.
Yeah. One financial guy who was really connected, he told me, he said this to some of his clients, and it's interesting. Name a product, you have to put down 100% and not take delivery for 6 weeks to 2 months, and the price won't go up. There's really no product that will do that, but silver, that's what's happening with silver. And I'd like to conclude by saying, and I do get this a lot, questions, comments on my site, mentioned in one of the advertisers, survival. People need to make sure they have their survival set up first, because it's no good to own a lot of gold and silver and be stuck in a high-rise in New York. That's a very unwise situation to be in when we start seeing the system and this collapse eventually occur here. You don't want to have a lot of gold and silver. You don't want to be in a huge city. So it's important to get basics first. You need to have your basics. It's good to have a nice piece of property, learn how to grow your own food, make sure you have seeds. It's good to have non-GMO seeds. And so you need to cover those bases first. And then once you cover those bases first, then it's good to have gold and silver value. Because people say, well, I'd rather have guns and bullets and beans than gold and silver. Well, what if you need to get more bullets, so you need more beans, and the guy who's going to sell you the beans doesn't want anything you have, but he'll take some silver or gold? And so people need to realize that's where we're headed. And so I try to look at the silver market as a trend change that's continuing to get more interesting, and it's developing into a very explosive situation. And it's been all these little events that are happening over these last several years that are leading to it. And that's what I try to show on my website, so people can be a little bit more informed. But I just wanted to add that. I think people need to be protected. They need to understand how to grow food. They need to be able to know how to protect themselves. And silver and gold are an excellent way to protect their wealth.
That's fantastic. And Steve, let me just say this to the listeners. I got to tell you, if you've ever found yourself, as I have, looking at these, well, you go on various websites, you look at these charts for silver, for gold, but specifically silver, because that's like the middle class. I mean, that's like the everyday guy's, everyday person's metal. And you look at these charts and you wonder, what am I looking at? Mr. St. Angelo, I feel kind of dumb when I'm looking at these reports. So I got to tell you, your reports, the silver reports, it has informed me, makes me feel like I mean, it connects the dots, and it's very informative. So that's my, if you will, my plug for the silver chart report. It really connected the dots for me. So thank you for that. And, of course, that's available via your website at srsroccoreport.com.
Well, thanks a lot. I do appreciate it. I think people will get a lot of